Hey y'all, this should be a quick one. I wanted to talk about the comparison between the LG V60 and the Microsoft Surface Duo. I think a lot of reviewers glossed over this comparison because they said the LG V60 is too large and chunky in order to compare to something as sleek and smooth and purpose-built as the Microsoft Surface Duo. But I think, frankly, that was a disservice to both of these phones. I think for a lot of people, if they specifically have the desire to have a dual screen phone, they might be comparing these directly, especially considering how much cheaper the V60 is as an option relative to the Surface Duo. Now, I wanted to make a direct comparison and talk through some of the differences between these two devices in terms of design, software, and really how good of phones they are. This is InnoIso, and this is my comparison of the LG V60 and the Microsoft Surface Duo. Now, most of the obvious differences between these two phones lie in their design. The V60 is obviously a lot thicker and kind of unwieldy in many cases, whereas the Surface Duo generally has a thin, more cohesive design, since you don't need an add-on case in order to get the same dual screen experience. But I think the thickness in many cases is largely overblown. In reality, side by side, the additional thickness of the LG V60 is really only that screen accessory, and so the phone itself is about as thick as the Surface Duo. And frankly, in most cases, I didn't notice the extra thickness as much. Now, generally, the LG V60 is a lot heavier, so it's more difficult to hold up. But since it is thinner and not as wide as the Surface Duo, I'd say I generally prefer using the LG V60 in one hand rather than the Surface Duo. Now, while in my comparison to the Axon M, I gave the Surface Duo the clear win when it comes to display quality, the comparison with the LG V60 is quite a bit tougher, because in reality, both of these phones have excellent displays. Both are AMOLED and both get generally bright enough in most scenarios. I would say the LG V60 has the more traditionally good display, and depending on what sort of content or the design of the content that you're watching, or the aspect ratio of the content you're watching, I think you might have preferences for either one of these. Since the Surface Duo has a 4:3 aspect ratio on either screen, it might make more sense to watch content that is taller and rather than wide. And whereas the LG V60 is better for more wide content. So a lot of YouTubers that are switching to 18:9 videos, you might enjoy watching those videos on the LG V60 over the Surface Duo. Now, both of these devices have the ability to span apps across the entire screen so that you can use the two displays as one large display. On the Surface Duo, as I mentioned in my review, the biggest issues with this lie in the fact that there is this gap between the displays that erases content rather than spreading the content out. The LG V60, on the other hand, does not do that. It spreads the content out, but the gap is larger. Now, I didn't find myself watching a lot of content across the two displays on the LG V60, and I generally wouldn't recommend it. In software, the way that apps are managed across screens on either phone is actually pretty similar. You can span across screens, you can move content from one screen to the other, or you can just flip the phones like this and only have one screen operational. So very similar in that. But I will say that the LG V60 is a lot more restrictive when it comes to spanning a content across both screens, probably because LG knew that the experience would not be good because of how large the gap was. Now, personally, when using either one of these phones, I found that I really use the primary screen the most, whichever the primary screen might be on the LG or the Surface Duo. I use the primary screens, and then I only flip the screens out or use the other screens when I had a reason to have two apps open at any time, which might have been 20 to 30% of the time, which I consider quite a bit. If you plan on using a dual screen phone similarly, you might be better off with the LG V60 because all apps scale to this screen a lot more naturally than this 4:3 aspect ratio. And so most apps look more organic when sitting in this screen, since many developers have been designing their apps for taller displays in the last few years and not more square displays. So I found that usually I would prefer using two apps side by side with the LG V60 instead of the Surface Duo. And then a quick note on performance. While the Surface Duo has been improving in performance over the last couple weeks, with each update I generally find it's a little bit easier to use. I don't think it's nearly as usable as most modern phones, especially a phone as fast as the LG V60. Now I'll get in more detail in my full review, but the LG V60 feels like a phone that was released in 2020 with top-end specs, and it performs like that. And so comparatively, I would take the LG V60 in terms of performance any day. It is significantly faster, and if you are truly trying to use your phones for dual screen productivity, I can guarantee you will get more done generally on the LG V60 than the Surface Duo, just because you won't be waiting for apps to load or for apps to snap into the right position or gestures to work properly. With where we are today, I think the primary reason why most reviewers are not talking about the LG V60 as compared to the Surface Duo is because it did require an extra case add-on in order to get the dual screen functionality. But I'm pretty sure that if LG actively made a dual screen phone to compete directly with the Surface Duo in a similar design, I think that phone would probably perform quite a bit better than the Surface Duo, and I would probably take it over the Surface Duo. And that's because LG has a lot of more recent experience making smartphones. And so generally, if they just ported over the software that they have on the V60's dual screen over to that hypothetical real dual screen phone, then I think I would probably buy it over the Surface Duo any day. Now, hopefully they could get something like that at a price point at below $1,000 or maybe below $1,100 to undercut the Surface Duo, which in recent weeks has been dropping its price more and more, probably because of a lack of demand. LG has proven time and time again, most recently with the release of the LG Wing, that they are willing to do something completely different. They are willing to build a new form factor. Well, while copying the Surface Duo's design wouldn't be new, it would be new for LG. And I think that would be a lot more compelling phone than something quite as bulky as the LG V60. I'm hoping that such a device comes pretty soon. Thank you for watching. Which of these phones would you prefer using as your daily driver? Let me know down in the comments. If you haven't already, be sure to subscribe and keep an eye out for my full review of the LG V60 coming in the coming weeks. I'll see you in the next one.